Hello, and welcome to your brief tutorial on how to use the checkpoint system in unique learning systems. All right, so as you can see, I am sitting here in my teacher dashboard, and what I'm going to do is come over to the hamburger in the top left corner that says menu, and I'm going to select News to You GPS. And that's going to bring me to my student profiles. Now, I only have one student profile. You're going to probably have more than one student profile. My student profile is a sample student. And previously, we looked over how to add benchmarks. And the difference between benchmarks and checkpoints is that benchmarks take a baseline piece of data, right? And checkpoints are going to be given each and every unit. So probably about once a month, and they're going to reflect what the student is going to learn for the pretest and what the student has learned that month for the post-test. And so with the benchmarks, they are standards-based. They are skill-specific. They are going to be a benchmark test on counting and cardinality, or a benchmark test on fractions, something specific. That's great use for the IEP goals and getting a benchmark piece of data for overall reading, math, writing. Checkpoints are going to go hand in hand with your lessons as you're teaching from unique learning systems. All right, so one important thing to point out with the checkpoints is that they are fabulous, but they are useless if you're not using unique learning systems as your form of curriculum, right? So, of course, we understand that no matter what it is, the uniqueness of our students requires adaptation for all materials, right? But the important thing is to start with that research-based, evidence-based curriculum. And unique learning systems is that evidence-based curriculum that we need to act as the backbone of all of our instruction. You take that evidence piece of the evidence-based practice, evidence-based curriculum, and you use it as a backbone when you're creating your story-based lessons, or you're using anticipatory sets, or you're using vocabulary, you're using making connections. These are all things that we do because we know those are evidence-based practices and they work, and it's systematic learning. That makes sense, but this content is well adapted and it's great for use within your structured learning, right? So if you are doing language arts and math with ULS content, it should go back to, it should make a connection to these checkpoints. If you are not reading the stories in ULS, then these checkpoints are not going to connect to anything, and then it's going to be data that's a waste of time. So the first step is to make sure that all of your lessons have that unique learning systems component so that these checkpoints can benefit you when you're making decisions for reteaching, or you're trying to figure out if concepts are being grasped. So now that we have gotten that out of the way, we're going to talk about actually administering the checkpoints. So when you click on checkpoints, it's going to give you two options: administer checkpoints or view checkpoints. Right now, there are no checkpoints to view. We're going to administer a checkpoint because this is a new sample student. So it's important to understand that checkpoints are meant to be your pre-test and your post-test for all content areas. So when you do a pre-test for, let's say, Unit 4, because that's the one it wants us to do, it's going in order, right? Unit 4, this is the pre-test for Unit 4. The system intends on you to then teach Unit 4 and finally give a post-test on Unit 4. It's going to combine everything. It's going to combine the content of reading and mathematics in one pre-test and post-test. All right, and just like we did in benchmark testing, you're going to have three options for giving the test. You're going to have teacher login, offline, or student view. Offline is an option where you open up that PDF. Let's see if it's in here. Hold on one second. We got Unit 4 Intermediate. Let's see. We're going to do a pre-test. We click offline. Where's that PDF? Ah, there it is. Printable instructions and test. So in this system, in the offline system, you are going to run this test, and it's not going to put the data in real time. It's going to let you add that data later. So let's say you have a student who you do not believe has the stamina to get through the full test in one sitting, right? This is a great option for them. If they can do 2 questions and then they have a behavior, or 2 questions and they fall asleep, 2 questions, they have a seizure, it doesn't matter. If you don't think you're going to get through the whole test, the offline version is a great version for that particular student. So if you were going to do that, you'd run the test. You always put in the student's name as the verification code. And it's going to have you run through this test offline. All right, so you, in this circumstance, in this scenario, you already printed out your pictures, you know the questions, you've given the test, you've given it separately. It might have taken you all day, but you already gave the question, and this is just you putting in the data, right? So it's not going to give you the actual test. This is you doing the offline version. You've already given the test, and this is how you put in the data. So let's say that I'm not going to put this piece in because I want to show you the actual test, the administration as well. But you're putting this in knowing that this is the piece of data that you have spent all day getting, or whatever it may be. Or maybe you did it yesterday and you're putting in the data all at once, you know, whatever it is, this is how you're going to put in that data. All right, so let's say that you are doing it through teacher login. So teacher login and student view, this is challenging to me. So with student login, they have to be logged into their account, right? Which is fine. And that might be the way you do it with some of your kids. You might have a kid who logs in on their iPad and they take the test on their iPad, and it's their iPad and it's their test and it's their profile. That's great. That is an option. It's also an option to log in with your teacher account and go into these individual students manually. So it's going to have the same view of the test. The students are going to see the same thing on their iPad that you're going to see in your teacher login. It's just, how do you want the data to be recorded? For me personally, I like doing the offline test and entering the data afterward. Another good option for me would probably be doing teacher login, so that I can control if the test needs to stop or start. Once the student takes a test, that's a piece of data that is in your data, right? And you can have it deleted and you can have it edited, that's fine. But let's say Johnny is at home and he's playing on his iPad and he goes and takes the Unit 4 Level 1 test for his post-test, and he's just like a whiz on unique learning systems and he takes it. Well, that's your piece of data. You don't know the circumstance of that piece of data. You don't know his environment. You don't know if it was him. It could have been a parent. It could have been a brother or sister. You don't know. You weren't there for that piece of data. So like that to me is not a reliable piece of data because you have no idea how it was obtained. So I personally keep student view. See how it's not enabled? Student login must be enabled. I have it not enabled for the students because I don't want that data. And this was particularly important when we were on virtual learning, because I didn't want anyone adding pieces of data that I was not okay with and I did not see how it was obtained, right? So we're going to go into the teacher login so you can see what the test looks like. So you click teacher login, you're doing Unit 4, you're doing combination of reading and mathematics. We already have given the benchmarks that determine that this student is intermediate. Oh, I'm sorry, this is based on their grade band. They're intermediate in their grade band. So that's going to be your 3rd through 5th graders. All right, run the test. Enter their name. All right, so it just verifies with you so you know what you're doing. You're doing Unit 4, Level 1 pretest. So you're going to start that test and you're going to give them the test. And you might have these pictures printed out. It depends on what your kid needs, right? So let's say that you know that your student needs much larger pictures, or they need it on paper, they need it with a black background, whatever it may be. You have already adapted it because you looked at the PDF that gave you the questions ahead of time. You got your picture symbols as you needed. They even have them in the document too. You could literally print this out and cut it out if it's a student who requires them just to be printed out. You might even just print out the pages if the student needs it close to them and they can choose from a field of 3. Let's say they do eye gaze and they don't want the backlit light from the iPad. A million things. There's a million things. I could list a million ways that you could adapt this, but please make sure that if you're adapting this, what you're doing on this, you're going to do on their Extend 1 testing. Because let's say they get down to math. Okay. If on Extend 1 testing, you have selected on their IEP that they are getting adaptations to the text or to the test, and you know that you are going to make numbers larger and you're going to draw circles or whatever it may be, make sure you're doing it on this too. Don't just give them this checkpoint with these teeny itty bitty little numbers and no pictures if you're intending on adapting their materials for the Extend 1 test. They're not going to be accessing it the same way. So you take the time to print out these pictures. It has it for you. Get all your ducks in a row and have these printouts. We know that a lot of our students really benefit from having the printouts so we can spread the choices apart further, or so we can put them on a black background. Those are countless reasons why you would do that, right? So you have the pictures in there. You have everything that you need. All right, so let's just say that in this particular circumstance, we are with a student who's just going to pick right off the computer, which does happen. So, oh, this is the other great thing. Oh, this is the great thing. I don't love this. It is what it is, though. This is one of those things where I'm like, dang, I really wish that they had the question on there. So you're going to notice when you go into the testing view, the question is not on the page, right? So you actually do need to have this printed out, or maybe you've memorized it. I don't know. It's up to you. But I always have this printed out because the question is not on the page when you're asking it. So it's important to know what you're supposed to say in the first attempt and what you're supposed to say in the second attempt if needed. So you're going to say to the student, Mr. H's class celebrates the holidays. Who is Mr. H? If you're taking a pretest, they probably don't know who Mr. H is. But this is a good question to determine if they know that Mr. H is not a candle and not a cat. They don't know for a fact, right? They might just be making inferences, or they might just guess the wrong answer. So I haven't read this. This is a pretest. I think Mr. H might be a cat. Oh, okay. So Mr. H is not a cat. And just like in Extend 1 testing, it brought me down to 2 answer choices. So it's important to say the question exactly how it's said in the teacher prompt, and then to say the second attempt prompt exactly how it's said. Who is Mr. H? You're not going to repeat the whole thing again. Mr. H's class celebrates the holidays. Who is Mr. H? When you're down to 2 pictures, you're going to say, who is Mr. H? And then they make a choice. It models Extend 1 testing. This is something that our students definitely need to get familiar with, right? Because it's something they're going to be doing. And here we go. Like I said, if you know that these numbers are going to be on here and you know that they're going to be too small, it'd be a good opportunity to do what you need to do to adapt that. And then, as it always is in unique learning systems, you get a score and then you can write anecdotal notes. So if you come down here and let's say there was a fire drill at question number 7 and you guys had to stop the test, I think that's something worth mentioning. I would put that in here. Let's say there's a behavior and you had to stop the test. I put that in here. The student falls asleep, whatever it may be. Any relevant information, anecdotal data goes in here. Save and exit. It's going to save your pretest. You write unit 4. And now you can see the student's pretest. I guess I must have given this post-test on accident a time before, but I did. I must have been going through and given that post-test. So we're going to pretend this post-test isn't here yet, right? As far as we're concerned, it's the beginning of the month. We've only given the pretest. That pretest, and this is their results on it. And you can see more details. If you click on the pretest, it's going to show you exactly what they got wrong, which ones they selected, what were the attempts. You have all that data. It's great data. complete data, right? And you can access that to make informed decisions on reteaching, right? Or, if the student gets 100% or they get 90% on this test and they miss one question, and the question is about counting. Okay, well, that lets me know that that's something I need to focus on during this lesson. So this month, they seem to have everything under control. Yeah, I'm going to teach it all. I'm going to teach all of it, because you don't know if something was a guess and they got it right. You're going to teach all of it, clearly. But you're definitely going to focus on counting, and you're going to remember that sample student struggled when they were answering the question about counting and identifying numbers. So that's something that I know, and I can use that as I'm moving forward with teaching the lesson. So once you finish, it's going to give you the pre-test, and then when you take the post-test, it's going to give you the post-test, and you're going to have the data for that, and that is a great way to make informed decisions on reteaching. So, as you can see, this is great data. It really is. It's it's clean, it's easy, it's well organized, it does a lot of the work for you, it has the probes ready for you. Checkpoints on unique learning systems is kind of the dream. So definitely something that you want to be using. It could not be, honestly, it couldn't be easier. They make it really easy for you. Once you teach the lesson, it'll become very clear that these questions, the answers are within the lesson, so that when they take the post-test, they are going to have the tools that they need, the knowledge that they need to complete that post-test. All right. I hope that this was helpful, this tutorial on checkpoints and unique learning systems. Thank you so much.